with the Counter-Extremism Project, a senior policy advisor, and the spokesperson. She is a former CIA analyst, and she's with us in Washington. Tara, we've been asking all number of people the same question, and that is, how can you possibly go at preventing what happened today, this kind of fiendish dual prong of a clear hate crime and what is obviously a terrorist attack?
Well, obviously in this case it was one individual, which means that it may have been a lone wolf. We don't know if he was connected to anybody else. And these are the types of attacks that law enforcement find particularly difficult to prevent because they're not necessarily communicating with a lot of people, and we don't know who he was in touch with. But what really is important to prevent these types of attack is the resources that the FBI has to monitor individuals that are on their radar screen. In this case, this individual did hit the FBI's radar screen twice in the past, but we can't monitor every single person that may, show some sort of sympathy to an extremist cause. We just don't have the resources. So more resources for law enforcement, intelligence officials connecting the information and pieces of intelligence in a timely fashion. And then really a big part of this is fighting countering extremism online, and that's part of what my organization is focused on, because individuals like this one, if they were radicalized and had never been to Syria or Iraq or in actual direct contact with members of ISIS, they may have come into contact with members of ISIS online or just through their rhetoric and propaganda on the internet.
How do you crush, though, an idea, especially in an open marketplace like the internet?
Well, there are a few ways. First, you want to be good about getting down some of the really, really gruesome content, and the tech companies have had a lot of pressure on them in order to take down some of this messaging. And then also organizations like my own and in the U.S. government work on countering the narrative. And to be frank, Americans, we're not necessarily the best ones to create that counter narrative, but part of it is creating partnerships with people on the ground in these countries, in these regions that speak the language, that know the culture, that can help create narratives and create, programs to undermine the messaging of groups like ISIS, who have been very good at what they do in terms of reaching out to disenfranchised and people who are vulnerable to their messaging.
And where it regards the FBI having more resources for them, a lot of people think through data mining we've cut away too much at our freedoms as it is. How, other than that, would the FBI have known this was brewing in this guy's life?
Well, there are a few things. I mean, it's just like with any sort of intelligence problem, you don't want to rely on one piece of intelligence. You don't want to put all your investment into one area. So you need to rely on human intelligence and signals intelligence, both monitoring, groups overseas. People in their local communities domestically need to be aware of what, people are doing. And in terms of, the FBI and the technology side of the equation, there have been some difficulties, and I don't know in this case, we don't have enough information to say what was at play on the technology side, but law enforcement and FBI Director Comey has been quite upfront about this, has said that they've been having trouble because of, new technologies, encrypted applications, encryption on phones in terms of monitoring individuals' communications. So it's a challenge, and it's one that I don't think, we've fully sorted out here, both the legal, debate of the privacy concerns and the technology concerns. But these are all challenges for law enforcement, but there's not one, silver bullet to solving this problem. It's going to be a combination of different types of intelligence, and it's going to be a combination of also the narrative and also, the fight overseas militarily, the taking back of territory that we see going on in places like Fallujah right now, and hopefully, in parts of Syria. That's part of the equation as well.
Overseas in that region, especially after the Iraq invasion, but after the dual wars we've just been through, what's the incentive to help the United States?
Well, I mean, basically, in order to get people on our side in this fight, we need to be showing that we have a clear outline vision. We need to be showing the values that we represent. I think one of the struggles for the, policies we've had overseas is, even if we're getting back the territory, if we don't also have the counter messaging, if we're not also fighting the battle online, if we don't have the local partners, the territory, the military part of this is not going to be effective in and of itself. So it's a holistic strategy. It's something that it's not going to happen overnight. This is a long fight. It's changing the minds of children and generational change as well. And it's investing in programs that we see being successful overseas. And I know the State Department has a new office set up as well, the Global Engagement Center, which President Obama created in March with an executive order. a former, someone from Special Forces, Lumpkin, and they're basically set up now to be an interagency focusing on all of this. So there are organizations like mine, the Counter Extremism Project. You can go to our website. We have, programs like 195 and a number of initiatives aimed at all these sort of aspects of the fight. And, the government and the private sector, it needs to be multi-pronged. The government can't do it alone. It needs to be, global, and it needs to involve the private sector and organizations in the nonprofit sector as well.
Tara Muller, thank you very much for coming on the air with us. We appreciate